caller.
We have Jason in Maryland.
Thank you. Jason, are you there?
Yeah, how's it going?
Hi.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
What's up?
Oh, so what I want to talk about is, well, first of all, I'll just kind of break the ice with, what are your views on determinism versus free choice?
Oh,
I don't make that distinction. I am what they call a compatibilist, which is just as a point of interest. That is what Daniel Dennett, philosopher Daniel Dennett, is. Mm-hmm. I believe that the physical world operates entirely within the bounds of physical law, right. But I think something that we can perfectly reasonably refer to as free will, that gives us all the things we would want from anything real called free will, is entirely compatible with physics.
Also, I think depending on what you mean by determinism, I might not agree with that either, since determinism is sometimes used to imply that things can only have one possible outcome. And I think quantum mechanics, although it's often misused, kind of tends to negate that. Not necessarily have anything to do with free will.
It doesn't have anything to do with free will, because it doesn't matter whether you get your right. end by rigid physics or by dice rolling. Yeah, there is an old episode of The Non-Profits where Dennis Lubay and I have a knockdown drag-out fight, and I lose, which was very unfortunate.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, in the opinion of most of the listeners, I lost.
I handled it
wrong. It was very unfortunate, but. No, I'm willing to take my lumps. I did not handle that work properly. But the question is whether, within the bounds of the rules of nature, whether it's rigid mechanics or there's some lubrication provided by quantum physics, whether in there somewhere there's something you can call you, and whether that thing called you can reasonably be said to make decisions. I think there is.
Okay, well, I'm not talking about a physical sense in that, people can only make one choice. My argument is that under the same conditions, if they were repeatable, a person would make the same choice every time. So what I'm saying is, my theory is that two things determine what decision a person makes. The first being their physical self, meaning, their brain composition, who they are as a person, and the second being their past experiences, meaning everything they've ever witnessed and the context that they place things in.
Yeah, wait, may I?
Sure.
I want to hit this exact point. No, wait. So are you saying you've said there's physics, and then there's the question of whether the person will make the same decision again, right? I don't quite understand where you're coming from on that. Are you saying if the person in the exact same circumstances would make the exact same decision again, then there is free will, or that then there isn't?
Well, I mean, free will is a very subjective term. And yeah. I'm not speaking about it in the sense of free will in a political sense, as in I can make this choice or I can make that choice.
Okay.
What I'm meaning is, I think of it like a computer with software. When you're born, the person that you are is the computer. Your machine is what you have. And then the experiences you have are sort of like the software that gets written into it. And if it was possible to repeat the same situation, like if I got up this morning and had oatmeal,
yeah.
If you could go back, rewind time, and I got up, I was that exact same person who had that exact same life, I would always choose to eat oatmeal that morning.
I think that is true, yes.
I actually think that it's not true.
Because
and that's why I bring up...
Because of quantum physics?
Yes.
If it's not true, it would be because of quantum physics. I don't really care either way.
I think that might be an irrelevant argument to whether or not we have free will.
But neither of us disagree with you, exactly.
Okay.
Well, I do.
Okay. So, assuming with the quantum physics argument,
but
I guess I'm coming down to the instantaneous point of time.
Yeah.
And I suppose you could say that this electron could have bounced to this state at any given time. But if we assume that I'm right, which I know Russell doesn't agree with me.
Okay.
If that's the case, then it's logical to come to the conclusion that from birth, the argument, a chain of events is set forth. And since you can't control the beginning of that chain of events,
yeah.
You can't control your life per se at any given point.
See,
you make your own decision. You have that choice.
That's where...
What's that?
I'm sorry, I want to cut in. That is where I disagree.
Okay.
I don't think it is relevant to bemoan not having had control of the circumstances leading up to your birth. I don't see how free will, how anything reasonable that you could call that you would want to call free will would demand that. Why do you need to also have control of everything that happened before you came into existence? You come into existence, there you are, now you are making decisions. And as far as I'm concerned, that is where free will begins.
Right. No, I'm saying I'm not arguing that. I agree that that's where free will begins.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that free will is a very subjective term that we assign to something. And that in reality, when you're born, once that chain of events is kicked off, you may have free will in a very, common sense sort of way, but you don't actually have very technical free will because I'm saying your life is set at that point. It's going to be what it's going to be. And even though you personally made the decisions, neglecting the quantum, physics argument.
Just to be clear, even if quantum effects had no influence and I am the result of events that came before me that determined what my initial starting conditions were going to be. And even if you could replay history and I would come out saying and doing and thinking exactly the same things, I think there is free will in a technical sense.
How so? What do you describe that to?
Because I am whatever it is that I am, right? So that is my start. Those are my starting conditions. To say that the starting conditions would be different would be to say that I am not me. It doesn't matter that there is no constraint on my decision making that is relevant because once I'm me, I'm making the decisions I would make, and I don't have a problem with that. Those are exactly the decisions that I wanted to make. Where is the constraint on my free will?
It's difficult because there are two very different sides of the coin. There's the side of, I'm a person, I feel like I'm making this choice. Of course you are making the choice.
I'm not talking about feeling. I mean in a practical reality. I think there's free will and it's that.
Right, okay. Well, what if we say it this way? What if I say that people have free will, but the choices that they make, given that free will, are already determined?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I do not have a problem with the idea that free will could, to an outside observer, look like we're wind-up toys. I don't really have a problem with that. Huh?
I'm arguing that people can make decisions.
Yeah.
People can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
But it's already set in motion, and their choices are already predetermined.
I think that might be true, or it might not, depending on how much the outcomes are influenced by quantum events. But invoking quantum indeterminacy, while it's it affects the question of whether things would play out exactly the same way, it doesn't really affect the question of free will, because whether you got where you're going by random dice rolls or rigid mechanics doesn't matter.
It does affect the question of free will if your only argument against free will is that things happen in this deterministic way.
Okay, I suppose, but that's not a good argument.
I agree. That's my point.
Okay.
If this is the main argument and that one gets knocked down, then you have to go and find some other argument against free will.
Let me recommend Daniel Dennett's book, Elbow Room, Varieties of Free Will Worth Wanting. It's like old, out of print, really hard to find, and one of the coolest things I ever read.
Check your library or something.